Good morning to you, Kay.
Oh, good morning.
Yes.
You know, I just want to say a quick word to the singles here, and we're so glad you're here. And when you're listening to this, what we're hoping that you're really going to get out of it is a better understanding of who you are when you are in a dating relationship, because these attachment styles really bloom in primary relationships. You can sort of be in college or be, single for a while and not dating, and you won't see them manifest as strongly as when you actually enter into a primary relationship. Then they really come into full bloom. So we want to help you understand yourself, who you might be dating, and we want to say probably anyone you choose to date will have one of these styles. It's not like you're going to find the perfect person who doesn't have.
You could try, though.
You could try, but you probably have one. So, and the goal is not to find the perfect person, it's to find the person who's willing to grow. If there's one, I think, thing that's important in the person you're dating, and we advise couples who are dating to read this book because it gives you a really clear signal right away. Is someone willing to look at themselves? Is someone willing to say, oh yeah, I do have that tendency or that weakness, and I am willing to own that? That's a keeper. That's a keeper.
Ooh.
If someone's willing to own. Because eventually in a relationship, the more you're each willing to own your own part and work on your own part, the more successful your relationship's going to be. So.
Because everybody has issues.
That's right.
Don't we all have some issues going on? So either you will know what they are and you'll manage them and grow out of them, or they'll manage you and you'll have no idea what's going on. You're going to have this racehorse inside of you that's heading in directions and you can't control it. So that's why this has helped us take our core dynamic and slow it way down into a highly controllable place to where it's almost non-existent anymore.
That's really true.
Did that make you feel good the way I said that?
Really good.
As a recovering pleaser, that was a joke, you guys.
They're not really fully
They're not
awake
yet. Okay, all right. Well, either that or it was a very weak joke, one or the other. Let's talk.
I couldn't tell you that.
Well, you can do that. You do anyhow. So, I always get a joke debrief when we leave here, and no laugh. I rank all the jokes and see which one has a higher ranking. Let's talk about the Vacillator.
Okay. Vacillators often are produced, that injured love style is produced when you have a parent that is sporadically available. Most vacillators do get some good, solid connection growing up, and it gives them a taste and a longing for more. But often the parent that is creating this style is sort of in and out as a parent. They're a very fun, engaged parent, and then they're sort of off in their own world until they're ready to re-engage again. My dad was a lot like this. He could be very fun. If we had fun in my house, it was because of my dad. And, on some nights he might play hide and go seek or cook some wild thing in the kitchen with us. And then on another night he might come home, and for weeks or months, you could just tell he was in a bad mood, and you don't go near and you don't ask him anything. So the connection was very sporadic, and it was entirely based on his mood rather than what the needs of my sisters and I were at any given time. And so what this creates in a kid often is it kind of turns their longing for connection on high, but leaves it unsatisfied. So a lot of times vacillators, by the time they're made to wait for that connection to happen again, then the child actually starts to become angry that they've been made to wait. So now they have this dilemma inside. I want connection, but I'm really mad at you for making me wait and wait and wait. And I'm really mad at you for it being so much on your terms and not on my terms. And so when the connection is then offered, there's this conflict inside. So many times vacillators grow up and they love the dating time of a relationship because it's all about connection, and usually in that honeymoon period, the connection is on high, the feelings are intense, and vacillators are on a quest to find that consistent connection that they missed as kids. Consistency is the key word. So dating feels like that. Oh, and I found my Prince Charming, or I found the woman of my dreams, man, this is it. And in that idealized state, they tend to idealize new relationships. They feel like they found what they've been looking for. And then they get married, and then time moves on. And of course, in marriage, you have to wait. There's kids, there's work. There's so many things that take up our time as a couple. So when they have to wait, all those old feelings start coming back. And when they're disappointed, they sort of go from all good, it was amazing, to I'm so disappointed, I'm so hurt. Vacillators use strong words. You betrayed me, you hurt me, you duped me. I thought you were this, and now you're that. And so they go from sort of being all in love to feeling very disappointed and angry. And unlike pleasers, vacillators will get angry, and they'll let you know they're angry. A lot of vacillators tend to think they're pleasers because they do want connection, and there's parts of a vacillator that are very kind and generous and wanting people to connect with them. The difference is when they are disappointed, they get angry. And pleasers, that's a very underdeveloped emotion in a pleaser. Vacillators that are extroverts usually it's a loud anger. It's an anger you can't miss. Sometimes introverted vacillators have a tendency to just withdraw. They just go off and pout. My dad could do both. He could be really angry, and then I remember times, and even in their marriage, where I knew something was going on because he was not talking to anyone. So it's sort of a silent withdrawal, but he was certainly expressing his anger through that. So what would you add?
Well, in the attachment literature, and again, even here at Missouri University, the schools of psychology and sociology are studying. I've even read some journal articles right out of this town on attachment, so it's not an unfamiliar thing again in all the major universities, but they call the vacillator the ambivalent because they are ambivalent about their relationship with you. Sometimes they're hot, sometimes they're cold. This is sort of the I love you, hate you, sort of the good, bad split type of a person, male or female. They are also called in the attachment literature preoccupieds, because they're preoccupied about how they're doing in relationship with others. So when they go away from an event, they will sit and rethink that event over for sometimes days about how they were received or not received, why somebody gave that person a hug and not them a hug, or this person didn't say hi to me, and it's probably because, and they'll develop a whole rabbit trail as to why that person didn't say hi to them, and they'll be preoccupied and think about that for a long time. Ever heard of anybody like that?
Yes.
Yes, okay, amen, brother. All right. That was the heartiest amen we had in this session. Thank you, Dusty. So they're very self-conscious as a result of that. And they're easily embarrassed and shamed, and if they think they're not in good graces within a social venue or with you, they all of a sudden feel very ashamed, and then they get mad that they feel that way, but they blame you. See, they will be very mad at you for making them feel that way. They are not aware that their sensitivities are on ultra high. Their sensitivities are very high. And that you walk into any meeting and sometimes you do get hugged, and sometimes somebody does miss your hand, and somebody doesn't say hi to you and greet you as warmly as the person in front of you. But they don't think that way. They just think there is something that you don't like about them. And then they'll spend a day thinking about that. Now,
and let me just take that back to the root. Often in my own childhood, I would contemplate and think about, what am I doing wrong with my dad? Why doesn't he want to spend more time with me? What is it am I doing something? So even as a child, there can be a lot of preoccupation around how to get the attention of this parent. And, there really is no way to get the attention until they're often willing to give it. And of course, again, this exists on a continuum from mild to medium to strong. But the vacillator parent often makes this child feel at times like a bother. When you get down under all the rubble, a lot of times at the core, a vacillator at their heart of heart feels like they're a bother and they're too much for people. And so when they start to feel that, they get very anxious, and that anxious quickly turns to anger, and they're mad at that person for making them feel bad. They say that a lot. You're making me upset. You're making me feel bad. And yet they have a hard time really coming up with other feeling words that describe what's going on inside of them. So the past is flooding into the present many times, but they really think it's just the person in front of them that's making them feel these feelings of abandonment or not being available enough. And of course, if they're married to an avoider, that person probably isn't available enough. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Did you want to say anything more about the parenting, or did you have anything that you want to say more about generally on the vacillator? I would just say, make one more distinction about vacillators. Again, they do what we call a good-bad split. You can be really good one moment and, with them and in good standing, and then all of a sudden, boom, if they feel bad, now it's all bad. And it's not a good scene. So this good-bad split, there's no middle ground. They have to learn to integrate good and bad, even in every moment. That no moment is perfectly ideal. If your goal is to maintain an ideal state of connection, constantly ideally connected, well, that's going to get disappointed every day. But they don't understand that inside. And again, it's not all on the left brain, a conscious thing. This is very that right brain thing, the implicit memory. Remember that part we talked about last night? This thing back over here, very strong and powerful. So it started here in early childhood, but it can pop up at 30, 40, 50, 60 years old, etc. And it feels just the same as here. So I put it slightly behind me like this to help you see that it's not something that's readily visible, but it's a very strong feeling that pops up. So here's one last thing. Vacillators like 0 degrees of separation. By that I mean, if it's opinions, thoughts, feelings, they don't like to be corrected, they don't like to be disagreed with, they don't like to have somebody say something different because they view that as a separation, that we're somehow that separation we want. Now, here's the deal. If you separate from them, they get really wobbly. It could be anyway, ideas, feelings, thoughts, opinions, etc. But if they separate from you, it's okay. It's fine. Because they're in control and they're not being abandoned. They're in charge of it, so they're fine if they make an independent decision or do something or have a different opinion. So it's like you make the movement away, they get upset. They make the movement away, they're okay. All right, is that clear? All right, anybody ever seen that? Amen? Yeah, okay.
So
let's talk more about parenting.
Just one second, I have one thing.
Okay.
They're anxious about the departing because it feels like an abandonment. It feels like being made to wait again. But they're anxious when they come back because they don't know if you're really going to see them and meet their needs.
Great point.
So they kind of have anxiety on both sides. And oftentimes the thing that isn't in the book that we've really been able to, kind of a phrase we've been able to coin since we wrote the book, was that vacillators desire connection they don't want to be vulnerable. They want this intense connection, but they want it to all be lined up just perfectly before they enter in and try and go deep. And so many times when I really, especially if I'm working with an avoider vacillator couple, I can give you a clear example. I worked with an avoider married to a female vacillator, and he really grew in his ability to connect and to entertain feelings and to be more vulnerable. And so I thought they were ready for a holding, so I had him holding her, that we'll demonstrate later. And I thought to myself, I bet she's going to sabotage this. Because when a vacillator really starts to get the thing they said they've always wanted, they're scared to death, because now you have the power to really hurt them if they take it and then you decide to leave again. So he was holding her, and it was, he was making amazing eye contact, and he was talking to the little girl part of her, and he was really with her. And she said, "Your hair is so greasy. When did you wash it last?" And I just said, "Wow, you're really scared." I said, "You just sabotaged that moment, and it was really an amazing moment." And I said, "You look inside right now and ask yourself, are you scared? Like you're getting the very thing you've told me that you wanted since you came into therapy. And now you're making that's scaring you, and you're making it go away." And she acknowledged that she was, and she could identify with that. So Vacilators, want that connection, but they don't want to have to be vulnerable. And that holding, vulnerability was required of her too, to receive what was going, really take it in. Vacilators have a hard time. As much as they want to take it in, they don't trust it to last. And so they're doing this all the time. So if you're married to a vacillator, you feel like you're kind of getting the message, come here, no, go away. Oh, that's too far, come back. Oh, okay, no, go away. And so it's kind of confusing being the spouse, because you feel like either you're being invited in or you're being pushed out. And you never kind of know when it's going to switch.
This is where I was talking about genders yesterday. I can have a couple at 9 o'clock in the office, in my office in the morning, 9 o'clock, male vacillator, female avoider, female pleaser. At 10 o'clock, I can have the female be the vacillator and the male be the avoider or pleaser, and the issues they raise, what we're doing is exactly the same. There's no difference in the complaints, the issues, the problems, the tensions, and the difficulties. It makes no difference. That's why I say the gender is far less of a weight in our offices than these particular attachment styles. They are king. Attachment styles are king, or queen, is whatever it might be, with respect to leading you and guiding you. Should we go on to the parent part?
Yeah.
Okay, why don't you start that?
Okay, as a parent, I've kind of given you a couple examples of my dad. They can be very engaging, and they're dedicated parents. They're just distracted parents. They really care about their children most of the time. They really want to be involved at some point. It's just that they're distracted with all the unmet attachment needs in their life, and so they have a lot of internal processing going on all the time. We have a gal in our family who's a vacillator, and I asked her, what do you think? How often, what goes through your mind after a family gathering? How long, what do you think about? And she goes, for about 2 days, I go over every conversation. And who said what, and how did I respond, and did they receive that, or did I make a fool out of myself, or did I hurt their feelings, or maybe they hurt my feelings, and I'm trying to figure out if I should do something about that. So she was preoccupied for 2 days after a family gathering. And so that's going to affect how available she can be for her child. So there's a degree of preoccupation that keeps a parent from really sometimes seeing what their child is doing, what they need, their cues they're sending to mom or dad.
So it's hard for them to have attunement.
It's hard for them to have attunement.
So they can be, if they lack attunement with the child because they're preoccupied with their own mind swirling, then all of a sudden if they come out of that swirl, then they see the child and they'll go, oh, child. And they will then want to engage with that child, and sometimes the child could be playing, little Legos or something or other, but they'll jump right in and say, hi, mommy's here, daddy's here. And then they'll want the child to be responsive to them because mom or dad now just showed up. And when the child kind of pushes them away a little bit because they're playing with their Legos, what happens to the vacillator parent? What happens? They get angry, they get hurt that the child, separated from them. See how this all works? And so they tend to be kind of intrusive or distant. Intrusive or distant, or what we call enmeshed, a bit fused with the child, or distant.
I think oftentimes vacilators do really well with babies. They're great connectors early on.
Amazing connectors.
Because they do know something about connection, and babies are pretty much just give you positive feedback, and they need you, and they don't know how to say no yet. There's 2 times where kids really learn the art of separating, and that's 2 and teens. And they stamp their foot, no, and I don't want you, and go away, and they resist connection. And they're trying to establish a bit more independence. And that's a difficult stage for vacilators because they take it personally. They feel rejected by their child, and then they struggle with that. So that's a difficult stage. When vacilators get angry, they actually feel a lot better inside. It's sort of like they emptied out that building tension of, am I connected or disconnected? And they sort of want everybody in the family to now be okay because they feel better. And they often don't really have a very clear picture of how their anger is affecting their family. And there's sort of a lot of leftover
Shrapnel.
feelings about what just happened. And the vacillator often is now in a good mood, and the whole family just sort of goes along with it to not set up another time of anger. So there's often a lot of unprocessed feelings in kids about the anger that can go on in the home.
Another thing that happens with the vacillator as parent is that they are such great, especially moms, they're so attuned with their babies. They just really get excited about this connection right here and the dependency and the delight that the child has, because an infant is hardwired to gaze into the mom or caregiver's eyes and just respond and coo and delight, and so they're very responsive. And the vacillator mother just loves that. So do vacillator dads, but if it's a vacillator mom, and they're so great with the baby stage that when all of a sudden, as Kay said, the kids begin to differentiate, move away, become different or individuals, they feel lost. So I see a lot of the vacillator females, especially in my office and through it, in and out of my offices, they want to keep having kids. I'm not saying this is 19 and counting, but I am saying that they do want to maintain that. So they will often want to adopt. They will want to maintain that baby stage because they really are excited about it, and they're kind of lost when the child isn't as responsive as they once were.
And I think it's a bit different for vacillator dads. They kind of feel threatened by that connection with the mom.
Yes.
Because all of a sudden mom's gaze is turned somewhere else. And of course babies take a lot of time. So if the vacillator is a male, sometimes they can feel very pushed away and threatened, even though they may love their child dearly. Those old feelings from very young start to pop up, and it's like, well, where's my place? And aren't I important? And now I had your attention, and now I don't have your attention at all. So the key for the vacillator, I want to mention too, we really haven't said this yet, but in our book, there's a chapter, of course, on each of these love styles, and in the back of the paperback that is outside for sale, there's a workbook that's quite thorough and quite deep that will take you on a journey of growth, whether you're the avoider, the vacillator, the pleaser. And we've had one comment from that workbook, and it's the same over and over. Wow, it changed my life, but it was hard. You ask hard questions in that book, in that workbook, and we do. And we just say, just go slow and don't stop. Don't overwhelm yourself. But there's some great conversation starters in even the first chapters when you're looking back at your family of origin. So just know that if you feel like, okay, I know what I am, but what am I supposed to do? It's all in the workbook. We don't have time to go through as much material here as is in the workbook available for you.
So again, if you are a pleaser or an avoider mom and you're married to a vacillator male and you have a baby, I've seen some vacillator males at that moment get so angry and jealous of that baby and the split off attention from them, it really creates one of their first major crises in their marriage, just because the attention is diverted.
And we get this comment a lot. Oh, I'm a vacillator. I don't really want to say it, but we love vacilators.
Yep.
A, they do know something about connection, and B, they want connection. So I think for some reason there's some sort of a negative association with vacilators, and we really try and dispel that, because all these are attachment injuries and there's a wound under every single style. And understanding the wound is what starts to give you compassion for your spouse, understanding that there's a wound under their behavior.
And again, these exist on a continuum, as Kay said this morning, mild, moderate, or severe, so that you got to keep that in mind, okay?
Okay, let's talk about vacillators sexually.
Okay, this will be a little wake-up thing. Sex. We're going to talk about that now. All right. What about the vacillator sexually? Again, it's sort of the same. It's on or off, hot or cold. Why don't you expand on that just a little bit?
Well, back to the dating years, vacillators like connection. They can feel. They often mistake intimacy, or they mistake intensity for intimacy. In other words, if it's intense, it's therefore intimate. Even a good fight to them is very intimate because we're going at it. The pleaser and avoider are not finding it to be
Yeah, that was not the
intimate at all.
definition of an intimate
No,
moment
but
for me ever.
intensity for the vacillator is connection.
Mhm.
And so many times, even in early dating, it's like there's a lot of tension sexually because it's an intense connection you can feel. So often I talked to a vacillator recently, and she had such a clear description of herself. She said, I realize I can make any man fall in love with me. I know exactly how to do it. And I love the feeling of that falling in love and the attention and having the focus, the strong connection going on. She says, but I never really stop and ask myself, who is this person? Is this a person I really want? Do they have characteristics that I like? She says, it's just all about the falling in love phase. And then once I'm married, I'm so disappointed and I can't remember any of the good. And she's divorced now. And she says, and I'm starting to see that I do the same thing in dating. I get all excited when it's new. But she says, the minute I'm disappointed, I want to run. Vacillators say two things all the time. I'm done. I'm out of here. And sometimes they literally do remove themselves from wherever they are for a while. But their poor spouse, if they're married, or the person they're dating is like, well, it's over. And then the next day, or the next 5 minutes later or an hour later, the vacillator comes back and often acts like nothing's wrong. And, I guess we're not getting a divorce. So they tend to use extreme language.
Vacillators will love sex because it creates proximity, closeness, intensity. So proximity seeking, sexually oriented, becoming close is one of their goals. So their goal then for sex isn't just to please you or to please themselves. It is a proximity seeking event to make their anxiety about separation go away. So what they will do, if they're anxious, they might initiate sex to try to create closeness, because in that closeness, it soothes that anxious core, makes them feel better, and then they feel close to you again, and they can then rest in that non-anxious state. So sex has an ulterior motive. It's a mood stabilizer, it's a tranquilizer, it's something to settle down that anxious core. And in addition to that, would you talk about the all or nothing with sex?
Yeah, I mean, there's a high value on sex until they're mad, and then it can become a weapon to, well, I'm not going to have sex with you because I'm mad at you. And even in the whole, we talked about the avoider. If they're going to have an affair, the avoider, it's probably going to be a one-night stand or, some sort of internet pornography or something like that. It's not going to have emotional connection.
Right.
Pleasers are usually too fearful to have affairs, and their affairs, if they do happen, usually happen somewhere in the mid part of a marriage where they're tired of being the giver and they don't have any idea that they don't really know how to ask or receive. So they're just fed up with, giving and everybody taking, and pleasers are vulnerable at that stage because they're mad and they don't care as much. Vacillators always have affairs that are an emotional connection. They always start with, oh, hey, he was just so good to talk to, or, she just helped me so much with my feelings, or, they tend to flirt because, again, it's an attention thing, and then, oops, we just went too far. And so every person I've ever worked with who's a relationship addict, who has a string of affairs, and that is their addiction, 3, 4, 5, 6 affairs in a marriage, is always a vacillator. And what happens is they start to have problems in their marriage, and it's so painful, and they don't know how to make it go away or what to do about it. And so if you go over here and start something secret and something intense, it's almost like a medication for what's going wrong over here.
That's male or female, right?
Male or female. I see it equally across the board. So, vacillators have to really realize when they're entertaining something out here, it's really a very addictive behavior to get rid of the bad feelings over here because they just don't know what to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we're not saying all these have affairs. We're just saying the tendencies that we see in each style of affairs do happen.
And just a couple of other quick points before we move on. Vacillators, when let's say you've had a big fight and then you're back together again and you're doing well, the makeup sex, it's phenomenal. I mean, we're talking really intense because it's just absolutely, again, all or nothing. They'll just be in 100%, and you just go, wow, where'd this come from? Or how come that wasn't here this morning? As a result of this idealization and what Kay was talking about the emotional affairs, vacillators are very likely to have pregnancies out of wedlock. And so they're very likely to have a child because they get so caught up in the emotional relationship. They just go, I just love this person so much. Sex is just an easy leap for them because it is an extension of this intensity that they mistake for intimacy. They don't know the person. They just feel really great around them. And they don't know all the red flags and they don't know all the baggage. We all have baggage. I don't, though. I have luggage and it's little monogrammed leather handles and stuff. But the rest of you have baggage.
Very pretty.
And it's nice stuff. And Orvis, little fly fishing stuff. And but that is how they operate. And so they're charming people. And they will dress lovely. And they, as Kay said, they can be seductive and flirtatious. Even when they're married, if they catch the eye of somebody, they just get a jolt of adrenaline, just knocks their socks off, and they can love that. So they do tend to be flirtatious. Anything more you want to say that?
Yeah, one more thing.
Okay.
Many times when we talk about sex in terms of desire level, the standard, belief is that men desire sex more and women desire sex less. And in many marriages, that's true. Where we often see it reversed is when the female is a vacillator in the marriage and they're married to an avoider, or
Yep.
sometimes a pleaser. And many times in that marriage, it's the female that has the higher desire level and the male that is more resistant. So oftentimes when we see the genders flip-flopped from what is more common, it's that combination.
But would you agree with this comment that it's not a sex drive, it's a connection drive?
Yeah, I think it's both. But yes, it's very much a drive for connection.
Yeah, okay. It's a drive for connection.
John? John?